Welcome to Load the Box. It's been a huge week, Jordan, since we talked last, which was last Monday night, I believe, is when we recorded, just before the news broke of Aaron Jones signing, Sam Darnold signing, and then also the Vikings signed a kicker. So those of you who are ready for Greg Joseph's departure, it is most likely imminent. There's a lot that we could get into. There's a lot that we can dive into. We could read off every transaction, but we're going to hit on a few major ones today. We'll talk a little bit more about the sort of state of the team with Dustin Baker next week. We'll get into maybe some more of the details surrounding the free agent acquisitions, etc. But first and foremost, I want to get your reaction, Jordan, to Darnold Aaron Jones signings, which happened sort of back-to-back-ish.
Yeah.
Late Monday night, early Tuesday morning of last week. How did those land for you?
Yeah, they landed the Sam Darnold signing made me upset, but not in like a why did we sign him kind of a way. It made me upset because I knew now, national media was going to lag the Vikings for, the plan was to let Cousins walk and bring Sam Darnold in. That's not going to win you a Super Bowl, Minnesota. And it's like every national media personality has forgotten that there will be a 2025 and 6 and 7 season for the NFL. They're doing quite well financially. So you are trying to team build through those years and ensure that you're going to be in a good position for, future seasons, as well as giving yourself a decent chance to win right now. I think Sam Darnold is a solid quarterback. He's not going to blow you away. I don't think he's going to absolutely clap down the side of his leg in, most situations. I think he's just like an average backup. And now when you are drafted as high as Sam Darnold was, that's a big disappointment. But what he is now, he's like an average backup. Probably takes care of the ball better than Nick Mullins does and can actually read defenses a little bit better than Josh Dobbs. I still don't know what to think of Jaron Hall, but I still think that there's going to be a rookie quarterback coming in, which I know we'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit. But Aaron Jones, that's a really interesting one. The Packers say take less money. He says no. They say, okay, bye. And then he says, hey, Vikings, I will take less money to play for you so I can stick it to the Packers. And, of course, Vikings fans and the Vikings front office is going to eat that up. He needs to stay healthy. And that's my concern with him. But I think he won't be asked to do quite as much as he was in Green Bay when he was healthy because – A.J. Dillon was kind of a letdown for the Packers in their running game. And so it was kind of Aaron Jones and nobody else. I think whenever he gets to Minnesota, it will be Aaron Jones and the Ty Chandler show, plus maybe a rookie running back, TBD. Or maybe, Ty Chandler didn't really have an impact his rookie year. Maybe one of these guys like a Dwayne McBride, some young running back can have a big step in this committee. But I like it, man. I mean, he's towards the back end of his career, but I think he's still got some gas left. It's just whether or not he can stay healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does provide value to comment on the healthy portion, right? So Aaron Jones, really for most of his career, at least dating back to 2019, he has been healthy. He missed a couple games in 2020. He missed a couple games in 2021. He played every game in 2022. But then last year, 2023, he missed 6 games. I believe it was 3 different stints missing games. Never landed on the IR, which is good. But 6 games missed is a little bit of a red flag. So, it's interesting because this is sort of the age, he's 29, turning 30, where at least proverbially running backs start to decline. And so what are the Vikings getting with Aaron Jones, who has been wildly productive most of his career and still seems to have that juice? If you watched the Packers playoff run last year, he was running all over the Vikings in Week 17. He ran all over the Cowboys in the wild card round. So there still seems to be juice left in the tank, and it's a relatively cheap deal. I believe $7 million. So it's all things considered, it's a good get. Because like you said, Jordan, Ty Chandler's still here. We really liked what we saw to Ty Chandler down the stretch. So even if Aaron Jones doesn't play as well as you'd like, or he does have some injury issues, you're not relying on practice squad guys. So I think those are obviously very important moves. Not a whole lot more for me to say on the Sam Darnold piece. I think you're hoping that O'Connell and a better situation can sort of coach up a guy who has lots of tools, has pedigree, but has been in bad situations basically his whole career. Obviously outside of the San Francisco year last year, but for the Jets in Carolina is hardly something to be envious of. So in some ways you could look at that and you could chalk up some of his bad NFL career statistics and output at this point as bad situations, bad coaching. I'm not holding my breath with that, but I am also hoping that maybe there's a little bit that Kevin O'Connell can pull out of him that other coaches have not.
Yeah.
So something that, obviously we're not breaking news here, but is very close to breaking news. Within the last hour, the Vikings signed a cornerback. Not with a Q. Shaq Barrett. Excuse me, not Shaq Barrett. Shaq Griffin, excuse me. Shaq Barrett plays linebacker. Shaq Griffin, he played for the Seahawks. He had a twin brother who played for the Seahawks as well. Jordan, you were talking before the show that this guy is, potential starter quality. Tell me what you know about him, what we're getting in this cornerback.
Yeah, so let's see. Let me I have my references up on my iPad, so if I'm looking down, that explains why. Podcast audience, sorry for wasting your time, but he's a former third round pick for Seattle. He spent 4 seasons up in Seattle. Played pretty well for them on some. I mean, look, he wasn't a part of the Legion of Boom or anything like that, but he was a pretty good corner. Ended up going to a Pro Bowl in 2019, signed a big 3-year contract with Jacksonville. Not big, but 3 years, $45 million, a pretty sizable contract, decent. Made it through the first season, all went well. He's like an average scouting corner, I mean, he wasn't blowing anybody away, but it was, this guy's fine. And then last season, I'm sorry. Hang on. I cannot find where he played last season. He might not have played last season.
He played at a combination of the Texans and the Panthers.
Okay, that explains it. The article that I pulled up on ESPN only was listing what he did for Jacksonville for some reason, and did not go into that. So thank you for that. But yeah,
it's partly because, and I think this does need to be stated, Jordan, that last year didn't go particularly great for him. He played with Houston for 10 games, 6 starts, but then he was released. And then Carolina picked him up. So that's a little bit of a red flag. Also, just considering that Houston was a playoff team, and so it's not like he was he was released from a playoff team that felt like they had better options ahead of him. So there's a little bit of concern there. I have not done the research into all that. Like I said, this is all happening within the last hour here. There's a lot more that we can learn about Shaq Griffin. But something to be aware of. He's also almost 29 years old. So
it feels
youth is not on his side.
Yeah, it feels like this is a move that's being made as, hey, look, it's like a 1-year, $6 million deal, I think. This feels like hey, do you still have some of that scouting potential? He had a back injury that took him out all but 5 games in 2022. Maybe, the back injury is still lingering last season, and that leads to him not playing very well, for throughout the course of the season. So maybe this is hey, okay, come on, let's see what you got, kicking the can. If it doesn't work out, I'm not trying to be any sort of way, but I don't think any Vikings fan is expecting a Super Bowl championship this year. So I think they'll kind of just gonna see what they have in him, and maybe he plays well enough that you want to give him another contract and maybe give him like a 2 or 3 year deal. Maybe he stinks and you only wasted $6 million in a year where you have like $55 million in dead cap, and a rookie quarterback on your roster, probably stouting Sam Darnold. So I don't know, man. It kind of feels like, why not? Let's give the guy a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, and also we've been talking about how this cornerback room, if nothing else, needs depth, and adding some veteran leadership to it cannot hurt when really Byron Murphy's the only vet in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Joanne Williams, and that's kind of it, I guess. But the rest of the guys are, first, second, third year guys, and so getting someone like Shaq Griffin, who's been in the league for 7-8 years, you get someone who has been around the block. He's been on 3 or 4 different franchises, so there's that added element of it too. No one is trying to replace Patrick Peterson with Shaq Griffin, but there's that idea of getting sort of a Patrick Peterson replacement for the vet leadership stuff, and
Yep.
I don't think there's anything wrong with this move at all. And like you said, there's some cap space still for this year. There's lots of cap space for next year. You got to use it. So getting a cornerback fills a need. Why not? I mean, do you want to go get more young cornerbacks? And maybe that's the approach. You just draft a bunch of cornerbacks until you hit one. But the hit rate on cornerbacks hasn't been great around these parts for a while. So getting a vet might make sense.
Yeah, I think that it's actually, and it makes sense too, because you sign somebody. I mean, everything you said is just spot on, and you sign a Kono, and in my mind, because the Vikings have limited draft picks already, not limited, but like limited, let's call it prime draft picks. They have a plethora of 4th, 5th, and 6th round draft picks, but it just kind of takes that off, in my opinion, where it's like, okay, we've got Byron Murphy, and we've got Mekhi Blackman, and we've got a Caleb Evans, and now we've got Shaq Griffin. 2 of those guys have to be okay or mid, and if they're not, then we'll, slam the emergency oh crap button. But they've seen enough of their defensive back room to know that, like, yeah, no, they're not shutting people down week after week, but they can give you a few good snaps a game, and they can be, again, kind of like middle of the pack defenders. So, yeah, man, I thought that was interesting that we went out and signed him. There were other free agents. What was his name? Jonah Williams.
There were a few lineman. Defensive lineman Jonah Williams, also a Ram. So there's that whole O'Connell connection.
Feels like a depth piece. I don't think we need to go in depth about him, but like he feels like a depth defensive lineman that's going to come in and probably have like 2 sacks, because that's what he did for the Rams. He had 2 sacks, so not really making history in Minnesota by any means, but he is now a Viking.
What about Jerry Tillery, a former Notre Dame defensive lineman? He has not necessarily broken any records since joining the NFL, but I'm curious what you think about that signing.
I like the signing. This is a Kwesi classic, isn't it? You take a guy who you think kind of has some high upside and hasn't panned out for one reason or another, and in Tillery's case, he just hasn't translated to the NFL, and Tillery is a good guy to talk about whenever, like, I'm trying to think of a comp in this year's draft class when someone tells you, like, this guy should be a first-round pick because he has all of the, like, physicality that you want, and he's, like, I don't know what position he's going to play, but he's just, like, an athlete, and he needs to be on an NFL team, and if he gets good coaching, he'll be able to yada yada. Yeah, that was Jerry Tillery. They were like, he'll play somewhere on the D-line, and he'll be really good because he's been really good at Notre Dame. And he just never got really good at anything. So now he's just kind of like okay at the some stuff and bad at other things. So I think he gives us options in there. I mean, like, he can't be worse than Dean Lowry. I mean, he's just kind of like another big guy to throw on the D-line, see if something sticks.
Yeah, not Kevin O'Connell. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was talking on the Paul Allen radio show yesterday, Monday, the 18th, and he was speaking very highly of Tillery, and obviously you're going to do that when you're the general manager and you've just made the pick. But he basically said a lot of the things you just said. You know, high upside guy, reaching his sort of the middle of his career. He kept referencing, you know, the idea of 10,000 hours and you know, liking to get guys in this window of their career where they're still on an upward trajectory, hopefully. And so there's obviously hope for this kind of player. Again, it's another sort of, you know, quasi classic prove it deal, which is fine. You need depth. Obviously, I think we both would have liked that defensive lineman that they signed to be Christian Wilkins, but
Yeah.
we digress. Maybe they'll draft the next Christian Wilkins. Some other names that just need to be referenced, just in terms of free agents, and then we'll jump into a very interesting trade that happened. Trent Sherfield, wide receiver, played for the Bills last year.
Yes.
He was signed. You mentioned Jonah Williams. We also agreed to terms with Dan Feeney, a interior offensive lineman, which again, it's depth. He's probably not going to be starting unless, you know, there's no other moves made. But I mean, you also have Blake Brendel and David Quessenberry back. The interesting thing about the Feeney signing is that does that necessarily point to Dalton Risner not coming back? So that's kind of an interesting kind of tidbit of that. I mean, Kwesi talked about Risner only insofar as wanting to find the best available, and you know, all the options are still open. Basically, not shutting the door on Risner, but also not saying that they're for sure going to go get him. So it's an interesting thing to think about. Like I said, I don't think I see Feeney as someone who's going to be starting week one unless things don't go very well for the next couple of months. So, last but not least on that, the kicker that the Vikings signed, his name was John Parker Romo. He was an XFL kicker, I believe. So, if I remember right, who was the guy, the USFL, XFL kicker that came to the NFL and he kicked for the Cowboys and didn't miss a kick all year or something like that?
Yeah,
Who was the Cowboys kicker this year?
Yes, I can't remember his name, but yeah,
Brandon Aubrey.
Yeah, he was like, I think he was like playing like not beer league soccer, but he was playing like minor league soccer, which I didn't know existed. And like, yeah, they did like a whole piece on him on NBC, which like slow news week if you're doing your piece on the kicker. But like, I think, you know, what are you gonna do? But yeah, I mean, look, Pauco Uomo, I'm not gonna act to be like a kicking expert or anything, but I looked at his highlights in the XFL, which means I only saw his makes, and yeah, man, like he kicked one from like 47, 48 yards, and it probably would have went from like 57. I mean, like it had distance on it, so he has no shortage in distance. It's just, you know, can he keep it between the pipes?
He's got the longest field goal made in XFL history, which was 58 yards.
Really?
So he's got a leg, as long as he can keep it straight. So I think it was time to turn over the kicker page. Why not take a flyer on a guy like Romo? So I mentioned and I teased the trade. It wasn't a trade for a player. It wasn't a trade for a quarterback. It wasn't a trade for anything material, but it was a very important trade with the Houston Texans involving lots of draft capital. The Vikings gave away, I believe, 3 picks. They got back 2. But the most important thing about this is the Vikings got back the 23rd overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, meaning they now have 2 first-round picks, the 11th and the 23rd pick.
Yes.
So, Jordan, what do you think that means? Do you think they're just going to stay at 11 and 23, or do you think there's something else coming?
If you think that they're staying at 11 and 23, I have what's the old expression? Like I have a budge to sell you or something, like, you know, like there's something about selling stupid people budges. Look, could they end up staying there? Yes. Do I think they will? No, I don't think there's hardly any chance, unless the Giants make some mind-boggling, earth-shattering move to go up to the 4th overall pick to take J.J. McCarthy, because I think right now it's guaranteed quarterbacks are going 1, 2, 3. Whether that means teams are moving up. Hey, quit that dog. Or whether that means that like the teams are sticking and picking what they're taking. But I'm gonna pass back to you because my dog is mad that someone's on a walk right now. So give me 1 second.
Such a normal thing to be mad about. I agree. And I think something to note here that has obviously received a lot of speculation over the last couple of months. It's a very hot button issue, for sure for the Vikings, but also the Patriots and just general NFL fans is, whether or not the Patriots are going to keep that number 3 pick. And it sounds like, at least based on what I'm hearing from Todd McShay earlier today on the Ryan Russillo podcast, talking about it's likely that the Patriots are probably going to stick at 3. They're probably not going to trade that for more picks. They're probably not going to do the thing where people are assuming they might do, which would be, trade it for picks, build their roster, get a quarterback later.
Right.
So, like you said, Jordan, first 3 picks, almost assuredly going to be quarterbacks. Almost assuredly, the Vikings don't have a chance of getting one of those. So, that then just sort of leaves you with, do you then trade more capital to get up to that 4th or 5th spot to get J.J. McCarthy, basically, is what it would be. Because Drake May's probably gone.
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels is probably gone. So you're probably left with, the second tier, like we've been calling them this whole time. So I don't know. Is that something that... Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and you might have been leading me into this, but I think that really is going to come down to, hey, Kevin O'Connell, what do you think you can do with JJ McCarthy? How much do you like McCarthy? And I like McCarthy a lot. I don't like that you're going to have to trade, 2 first-round picks and potentially more to move up to take him in the top 5. That seems rich for me. But, that's the quarterback tax, right? Is you always have to overpay. I will say this. I don't like trading 2 first-round picks to move up and take him in the top 5. I'd be okay with it, but I don't love it. I don't want to say, they are reaching for a quarterback because this is Christian Ponder all over again, because, J.J. McCarthy's a legit NFL prospect. He has legit athleticism. He has a cannon that he just didn't get to use it that much because he was at Michigan. And when he did get asked to use it on 3rd down and long situations, he was an assassin. So cut the JJ McCarthy slander. I get it. I would have also liked to have seen him, with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and see what he could do on, that kind of a squad that was just airing it out 24/7. That's not where he played. He played for Jim Harbaugh. They were pounding the rock. I don't think they threw a pass in the second half against Penn State this year just because they felt like it and they wanted to send a message or something like that. It's okay. He can still be good even though his team in college ran the ball. So, but I do want to explore the possibility just super quick. I mean, there's a chance the Vikings are trying to move up and they went and got this pick to give themselves a better chance of moving up. And there's a good chance that they don't trade up because, like I said, the Giants move up. And I've seen a lot of people saying, well, that's why they shouldn't have traded up and blah, blah, blah. And to that, I would just say, would you have been mad if they made this trade on draft night to move up to 23 and decide, hey, we want to take a player in the first round and now we have 2 first-round picks instead of 1? I don't get that. In my mind, you either are using it to go up and get McCarthy or you're probably trading back at 11, getting picks to, build more roster, blah, 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 and then taking one of the, I would say, 2nd or 3rd tier quarterbacks in Penix Jr. or Bo Nix. And then you have another first-round pick to say, take a defensive player or take, I don't know, a wide receiver if you really want to be greedy. But, you have those picks to be flexible with. I don't know. I love the trade. I was super hyped about it.
Yeah, I think there's obviously going to be speculation until the moment something happens with this, and there's also a realistic chance that nothing further happens with this deal until draft night. There's a very real chance that the Vikings sit on this until the first 2 picks are in, and then they make a trade with Arizona or San Diego, excuse me.
And
Los Angeles,
maybe right now all reports say that the Patriots are sticking at 3, and That's because the Patriots
Yeah.
are saying that to drive the price for three way up. And then on draft night, whenever the Vikings are like, this is
Yeah.
the final offer, New England. I mean, you gotta, maybe New England comes off of it then versus, because now it's time to
Yeah.
actually play baseball. It's time to actually hit the ball, not just
Yep.
talk about hitting the ball.
Yeah, and the other thing too that leads a little bit to an idea of a JJ McCarthy Vikings draft pick would be the Vikings are sending quarterback coaches to his pro day, which is sort of obvious, but then also Quasi and Kevin are going to be putting JJ through a private workout. So there's obvious interest from the Vikings. They could definitely be doing this with every other quarterback prospect as well. But I think if you looked at that second tier, McCarthy is probably the top of that second tier. So
Yeah.
it would make sense that this would be the player that they'd be going after. Speaking of receivers,
Heyo.
the Vikings lost a receiver that we were all kind of expecting. KJ Osborne was a free agent. He signed with the Patriots on a 1-year deal. With how bad the Patriots are, there's a good chance he's their number one receiver next year, if they have anybody who can throw him the ball. So the Vikings lost their wide receiver 3. Brandon Powell is back along with Addison and Jefferson. But you got to build up that room, unless you're really counting on internal depth development from guys like Tristan Jackson, which, I wouldn't count against that. I mean, the Vikings have probably the best, if not one of the best, wide receiver coaches in the entire league in Keenan McCardell. So you could definitely see situations where guys like Tristan Jackson really improve. And find a way, into the mix, a la KJ Osborne did after his rookie season. So I see that happening, but the draft is, of course, an obvious place to go build and grab some more talent. We've talked about this idea of the draft. The Vikings are not going to be taking a receiver in the first round, so we can forget about any dreams of Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze. We can just forget about that. But Jordan does have some thoughts here on some folks that the Vikings could grab in later rounds to bolster that room. So Jordan, where do you want to start?
I'm gonna stout. I mean, look, I'm gonna be on. I'm gonna stout at the not at the top because I'm not gonna be talking about Malvin Harrison, but I'm gonna talk about a guy who a lot of people think is gonna go mid to late round 2. Maybe he slides into round 3. The Vikings move up. Oh, maybe like he has like a. Who was the left tackle who he had a picture of him smoking a bong, like the face mask. Like I can't remember who that Tunsil, Laramie Tunsil. Maybe he has a Tunsil bong mask video come out, but Ricky Pearsall, Florida's number 1 wide receiver. He's 6'1". He's like 189 pounds. He ran like a 140-yard dash. I want to say I saw a stat. Let me double check this really quick. Oh yeah, this is a hot podcast right here. He got a 9.65 on his raw athletics score, which that is out of 10, and he ranked 107th out of 3,063 eligible receivers since this became an eligible stat. So he's like a pretty good athlete. And I just love what he does in the slot and on the outside. I do think he brings some of that, like, he can truly maybe be a 1 in the NFL if he gets in the right fit and the right coach that knows how to use him. I think he runs good routes. I think he has good hands. He's good in screen game. He is to me what like Rashee Rice was last year, which is a receiver that everyone is saying like, yeah, he's gonna be like a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and I'm like, I like him a lot, and I would like for him to be on the Vikings if we could make it happen. Now it's gonna be hard to make it happen because I think 23 is too rich. We don't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick, so he might just be out of reach of the Vikings, and that's okay. I do have other options for us to look into. Do you know anything about Pearsall or about the Florida Gators offense?
I honestly do not. I think I stopped paying attention to the Florida Gators the moment that Anthony Richardson left. So, and obviously, they did have one season together. I guess I shouldn't say obviously because transfers and all that, but he had one season with Richardson. But anywho, I don't think I watched much Florida Gators
I think
football
the quarterback
last
this year
season.
was Graham Moutz. Oh,
You
like,
are correct. The
yeah,
Wisconsin
yeah,
transfer.
yeah. I
Yep.
was gonna say I would think he
Not
played at
terribly
Wisconsin.
exciting.
Nope, not an electric offense to go from like Anthony Richardson, who everyone was like, holy crap, this guy's, he's wild, he's a cannon, and sometimes it
Yep.
misfiles, but everybody loved him. So, moving on, I'm gonna go with a. This is probably a little bit more realistic as like a fourth round pick, but it might not be. I don't know. I can never tell where these people actually are going to get drafted. Like I always feel like they're going to be like later than they actually end up going. But Jalen McMillan, Washington's number 3 wide receiver. I think he's going to go in like the fourth or fifth round, or third or fourth round, and he would be an interesting option for the Vikings. Now, this is my problem. A lot of what he did was like depot routes down the field. And so if that's his specialty, we kind of have a guy that does that already in Jordan Addison. So we would have to ask Addison to become more of like a over the middle typical wide receiver. Which I don't think he would be. I think he could be good at it, but I definitely like keeping Addison not getting bulldozed by a 300-pound linebacker. So that's kind of some of that, but I mean, obviously everybody watched some of Washington this year. McMillan was one of those, threats running down the field, and yeah, he's the third best allegedly of them, but Justin Jefferson was the second best option on that LSU team, and now he is the best player or the best non-quarterback in the game. So, you take your pros and your cons. Do you have any thoughts on McMillan at all?
My thoughts on McMillan is synonymous with what you're saying about the Jordan Addison piece. I think in general, if I'm the Vikings, I'm looking for more of a I don't want to say KJ Osborne type because obviously KJ Osborne did not turn out to be who we wanted him to be. But I want someone maybe a little more big bodied. We don't need another little guy. Jalen McMillan isn't tiny, but I would prefer someone who is willing to go over the middle and take a pounding a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like I said, we're not getting Rome Odunze, his teammate from Washington, but someone even with his body type where he's a little more bowling ball like, and isn't necessarily as long and lean. And now, of course, Justin Jefferson is lean and mean and takes shots and pops right up all the time. But that's kind of where I'm at with McMillan. I would not look at the pick and be disappointed by any stretch. But I would prefer probably someone who's maybe a little bit more route runner prowess than just deep threat is maybe the most important thing of this this long-winded answer, because I think the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell have been very, very emphatic on having receivers who can run really clean routes because of the complex route schemes and everything, lots of choice routes, etc. And I would prefer to have somebody who is a route runner extraordinaire, and I think they would too. Frankly, that's what Jordan Addison is. That's what Justin Jefferson is. Even if Jordan Addison is like largely a deep ball guy, he's a really silky smooth route runner. So yes. That's where I would lean. Not out on him because, like I said, best wide receivers coach in the league. So you get anybody in here who's got 2 hands and 2 feet, I think it would turn him into something.
Yeah, I agree with you. And here's a guy. Oh my God, I sound like Chris Collinsworth. Now here's a guy, Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. Yeah, he is Christian McCaffrey's brother. Yeah, he had like.
Don't do it.
Brother. He had such elite agility drills. He can run routes. He's a slot receiver. He is the second coming of, Adam Thielen, the slot machine, as this show called him. I mean, I just think he's going to be a good slot receiver. And I don't think he's going to be as good of a receiver as his brother is a running back. Just a football player, because like Christian McCaffrey, he does it all. It feels like, he catches and he runs and he blocks and he does everything. His little brother is, I think, going to be a fine slot receiver who, if you tell him, by the way, you get one-on-ones on every play because Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson are on this offense. Can you get open? I think he answers resoundingly yes. He's 6'2", so he is a little bit taller, but he's weighed in at 198, so he's a little lean. He's not absolutely stacked. He's not that KJ Osborne bowling ball that you might want, but I do think he's going to run a better route than KJ Osborne, especially if you give him like a year or two. And also, it would intrigue me to see what he could do in some Deebo Samuel-esque situations. And I don't just say that because Deebo plays with his brother. I say that because he is so shifty and he is so, like, you almost just want to put the ball in his hands and watch him, like, juke people and run around for a little bit. And so I think McCaffrey could be a weapon on this offense, and he went to Rice, man. It's not like we're talking about, well, do we have to trade up into the first again to get, Luke McCaffrey? No, I mean, he's probably going to be fifth rounder, fourth rounder, and we got some of those. So Luke McCaffrey is my number.
Quick couple notes here. I should probably clarify my earlier comments. I think the roundabout way I was getting to where I was getting with the Jalen McMillan thing was more around the idea of the route running ability. I think that's where I was trying to remove the bowling ball stuff. I think there's an idea of wanting some guys with some meat, but I think the more important thing, you want crisp route runners. And one other thing with Luke McCaffrey that I think is very important to point out, which I think could serve him well. This is the case with guys like Julian Edelman. He was a quarterback.
Yep.
He played quarterback for 3 different seasons, 2 at Nebraska. Gophers fans might remember him. And 1 at Rice. His first year at Rice, he had some games at quarterback. So, one of those guys that couldn't quite make it as a QB and then transition to the receiver. Like I said, that's what Julian Edelman did. He had a fine NFL career as a slot receiver. Some want him in the Hall of Fame. So, it's an interesting tidbit. It's not necessarily proof that he'll be good or not. But I think when you have a guy who thinks like a quarterback playing receiver, you'll probably get a smart receiver. And I think that's something that you like. Like I said, in a complex offense.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having a smart receiver that has the athletic ability that McCaffrey has. And it's not just, well, his brother's good, so he has to be good too. He legitimately tested really well at the combine. You can see it whenever you watch him play receiver at Rice. Like he's a pretty solid receiver. He's not blowing anybody away, but he also is playing at Rice. So, let's remember that, like, look, he's juking some guys out that are also not exactly top tier competition, but he also has like some post man throwing him the football. Even though I think the quarterback at Rice this year used to play at Georgia, and I can't remember his name. It was like JT Daniels or something. It's not JT Daniels, but anyway. Yeah, man, I like McCaffrey. I've given you guys some options. There's obviously a ton of receivers, and I'm going to be honest with you. I am the guy who said, shucks, we drafted Justin Jefferson. That guy's going to stink. And so I've been wrong. That's my worst take of my entire life, and I'm open about that. And I'm A-okay to say that that's the worst take of my entire life, but here's a good take, and these will be my final thoughts. A good take is you should be following this guy over here on X.com at Will Badlose. Baseball season, like 10 days away?
Next week, dude. Opening day is a week from Thursday.
It's incredible. It's a brilliant time of year, and I know, Will, you absolutely eat that up, and the Bad Loser blog is going to have you covered for baseball content, basketball content, I think, and football content. And I didn't want to throw you under the bus. I don't know how much of a basketball guy you are. I don't know if you're like writing pieces regularly about that, but wanted, and then also make sure that you're shopping Unified and following the show at LTB Vikings. One more time, that's at Will Badlose on X if you have not already subscribed or followed him there. And then the show, obviously, subscribe to us. We love you guys, blah, blah, blah. My final thoughts are actually going to be really easy. I don't think there's going to be a trade before the draft, and if it is, let me specify that. I think that if there's a trade before the draft, it won't happen until like the Tuesday before the draft. That is when I will be anxiously awaiting news. I just don't think that it makes sense for the teams that are going to be trading back. I don't think it makes sense for them to trade back right now. And for the Vikings, it doesn't make sense for you to trade up, especially if it's not trading up to the number 4 pick. But even then, you can still be leapfrogged by another team. And, you could say like, oh, who cares? They'll get one of the 4 guys that are going to go there, but maybe they really have their heart set on, Jaden Daniels and JJ McCarthy. They don't want any of the other 2. And I don't think that's the case, but maybe that's what they say. So if you move up, there's a chance you don't get them. So I think it's going to be all quiet in terms of trades. I don't think you'll see anything too crazy. And I'll end with this, and I won't go on too big of a tangent, but this draft is going to be very exciting because there's going to be we have a lot of middle round picks. Kwesi's got to hit on some of those. Like he has to. That's what he is paid to do. He has to hit on some of these middle round picks. Some of the receivers that I pointed out tonight. Some of the defensive tackles we've talked about in the past and linemen. If he can hit on like 2 or 3 guys in this draft, plus he gets the quarterback right, I think we're talking about this 2024 NFL draft for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, holy cow, that's when it all changed. And I would love to be able to say that. So, I've been Jordan Hawthorne. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you next week with Dustin Baker. Will, I'll let you walk us out of here.
I think to your point, the 2024 draft will be where it all changed, for better or worse. I mean, this is the inflection point. And this is, as Dustin will always say, this is where Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah are either going to get extensions or they're going to get fired. And I think this is, if you get the quarterback right, everything else can fall into place. So it's an exciting time to be a fan. It's a scary time to be a fan, but it's also more than anything, there's a lot of excitement and hope. So my last final thought here for tonight is going to be Harrison Smith. His 13th season in the NFL is coming up. He was a very likely cap casualty, according to all of us experts over here on the podcasting and the blogs spaces, and everybody was kind of thinking, oh, he's going to get cut. He's got too big of a cap hit. And lo and behold, for the second time in about 3 years, he restructured his deal. He's going to make about $9 million this year, down from about the $19 million that he was scheduled to make. He's taken about a $10 million pay cut because he wants to stay in purple. It means that much to him. This franchise, this fan base, this state, this community means that much to him. He wants to stay here. He loves football. He doesn't want to walk away yet. It's a huge moment. I'm honestly like getting goosebumps talking about it because yes, Harrison Smith is getting up there in age. He's been in the league for 13 years now. He's lost a step with speed and everything. You could see it at the end of last season. But he's still got a little bit left in the tank. And I think the most valuable thing here is the locker room presence and just the absolute love for the game and love for his teammates that he possesses. And it's an uncommon thing where a guy would sort of, give up maybe one more chance at free agency or one more chance at one more contract because of a connection that he has to a team for over a decade. And I think something that we can all appreciate as Vikings fans is that sentiment of wanting to stick around and wanting to stay here for the remainder of his career. So this could be it. This very well could be the end of the Harrison Smith run this last season, 2024. And I think we'll all appreciate it. He's obviously a Ring of Honor candidate. He's up there with jersey retirement candidate. Vikings don't retire too many jerseys. You can't really in football, but number 22 could be an option to retire in the rafters at US Bank. He's been that good, that important, that much of a leader in the community and the team. I keep campaigning for a statue, so let's hope we get one of those. If we get that Super Bowl ring and if he's on the roster, you can bet your bottom dollar he'll get a statue outside of US Bank.
Could you imagine if he comes back? He's going to have to come back next year because I don't think it's happening this season. But if he came back next year and he had a pick in the Super Bowl, like immediate statue, immediate. I mean, they would start construction before halftime even was over. Like it would be incredible.
with his white beard and
Yeah,
balding head. And old man Harry. We love you, Harry. We will be back next week, like Jordan said, talking with Dustin, all this stuff in more detail, and sort of how this roster is taking shape ahead of the draft in just 5 short weeks. This was Load the Box. Skull y'all.